What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a huge episode here as we are getting ready to wrap year number 1 up. We got a huge episode for you guys, a lot of action in this one, so you're going to want to stick around for the entire thing. Got the entirety of the Season 1 off-season recap, custom recruit information, and of course what you're seeing on screen right now, national championship game, because we got to see who ends up winning the national championship game, even though it is not. Neither of these teams are actual FCS schools, so should still be a good episode. I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit the subscribe button if you do happen to be brand new to the channel, and we go ahead and get things underway here as national championship this year taking place at the Rose Bowl. Two teams from the same conference in Kent State and Eastern Michigan going up against each other. And how about this for one of the first touchdowns of the game? A fumble recovery to get into the end zone. And Kent State is going to actually strike first here. They will take a 7-0 lead as, well, it's almost seemed like that ball was moving forward, but not quite. And that will mean that this fumble was indeed valid. And Kent State will take an early lead because of it, as it is a 10-0 lead as of right now. Could get even bigger as Kent State is going to be able to recover yet another fumble. Darius Reed had a 30-yard reception, and he just didn't retain control soon enough, unfortunately. And now Kent State, they can blow this game wide open potentially and do it early. We'll see what Tyler Williams decides to do. He steps up in the pocket, but he throws an interception himself, and this man is gonna be gone like a girl in a country song as well. And that will be a touchdown for the Eagles, a score that was desperately needed as well in order to go ahead and get back into this ball game. Is now 10-7 ball game here. Tyler Williams gonna drop back to pass. He's gonna get it over the middle here, and look at this, Chris Rogers is gonna get a little bit loose as well, and he'll strut his way into the end zone. Touchdown, Golden Flashes. And now back to a 2-possession game. Is Kent State, who have been road warriors this entire FCS playoffs, are they going to do it? Are they going to be the ultimate Cinderella? Oh my goodness, we might be seeing something special here, as we got 2 minutes left to play in this first half. They will, of course, kick the ball right back as Eastern Michigan does need a spark on offense. But how about the special teams, though? Some space down the sideline, and now it's all clear. It's gone like a girl in a country song as mama, there goes that man. And it makes it briefly a 1-possession game, but Kent State, they will respond quickly with another touchdown of their own here, as Neal is going to just run over a couple of defenders here. Heart of a champion, as it makes it 27-14 now, as Williams looking over the middle finds Chris Rogers once again. Touchdown Kent State, and that makes it 34-14 right now. Absolutely phenomenal performance for Tyler Williams, as that was not an easy throw to make, and he was able to sliver it through in there as the lead continues to grow for the Golden Flashes. 41-14 now. This is the 20 seed. These guys narrowly got in as an at-large team. Only 24 teams made it in. They were number 20 going into this thing, and now we're talking about them as national champions. I promise you, nobody, and I mean nobody, could have seen this coming. When this tournament did first start, been an absolutely wild ride, as Kent State will look to get one more touchdown on the board late in the third quarter, and Neal's going to get yet another touchdown on the ground, as it's now extended to a 34-point lead. Absolute blowout here in the national championship game, as the Kent State Golden Flashes are going to be named your Season 1 national champion. They finished with a final record of 13-3, as they will take that national championship home, and that head coach is going to be carried outside of the stadium. So that does end up wrapping up the first season of the FCS playoffs here in this dynasty. And something that I really love about this playoff format is that truly the best team is settled on the field, right? I mean, if it was just the original BCS system, it would have been San Diego State and Temple, neither of them making it to the semifinals. Even if you go to the current college football playoff for the FBS level, none of the top 4 make it to the semifinals. And matter of fact, a 20 seed winning the national champion. So definitely love this format. And even though probably future seasons might not be as chaotic as we saw here today, that being said though, I really love this format, and I can't wait to see how it evolves along with this series specifically. Now, there was a bracket challenge, if you guys remember from when I originally introduced the field of 24 to you guys, and I do have the final results now. For the first place was Moonlight on Discord Predictions. That was the name of his bracket. And then in second place was the Troy Hunter. So I will be getting in contact for both you guys in order for you both to receive a channel member level prospect. And really appreciate everybody participating. It was really fun, man. Really fun to see all that come into fruition. And again, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for making this series so successful. It's been really fun doing this so far. So we see a national champion officially get crowned. Now, Sports Illustrated magazine says, you know, Kent State Golden Flashes disputed 2005 national champions. And listen, if it was the regular BCS system that originally came with this game, it would have been a national championship between San Diego State and Temple. And listen, both those teams, very talented teams, don't get me wrong, but San Diego State, they got eliminated in the quarterfinal by Montana, and then James Madison actually beat Temple in the second round. So yeah, they were the 2 highest ranked teams, but I mean, the best college football team, it played itself out on the field, and that's why I love this FCS playoff system, man. You know, definitely some chaos. Probably won't always see someone as low as a 20 seed win the national championship, but hey, they proved it on the field. They earned this national championship. So now we go into the offseason, starting off with some awards that have been won over the course of the season. Starting with the big one, we have the Heisman Trophy winner, and that is going to go to senior running back Brian Brown. Now, Brian Brown had an excellent season. He ends up with almost 2,000 yards rushing on the year, as well as 26 total touchdowns. He did also chip in 28 receptions, 570 yards. Didn't do much in the national championship game against Kent State, but make no mistake, a guy that averages 7 yards a carry, he is a bad man. Now, speaking of bad men, and will be returning back next year as he has a couple more years of eligibility, Barrett Haston, he ends up with over 3,000 all-purpose yards, 32 touchdowns. And the thing is, he didn't even play the entire season, right? This is a guy that actually was suspended for a decent chunk of the year. I wish it would show like how many games a guy played. But he averaged 8 yards a carry. That's really good. Was a huge threat in the return game as well. As for third place, that went to Kerry Williams. Now, Kerry Williams did get eliminated by Eastern Michigan all the way in the first round, but a great season for Mr. Williams. He ends up with over 4,000 yards passing and also ends up with 40 total touchdowns on the year between passing and rushing. He does graduate following this season, though. Now, we do see 2 actual FCS guys on the list. Ikedo Woods, a freshman redshirt. He finishes 4th in the Heisman race. He was, decent against North Texas. Couldn't lead them over the top. but he ended up with 2,000 passing yards and almost 1,400 rushing yards on the year. So really the true definition of a true threat quarterback. He ends up with 36 total touchdowns on the year, and I only expect him to get better. And this Georgia Southern program to get better as well. I would expect them to make a deeper run in the FCS playoffs next year. And then John Reed. Now, Chattanooga sucked this year. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Chattanooga, they finished 4-7 on the season. But John Reed was a really bright spot in that team, man. 140 receptions, 2,109 yards receiving, and 19 touchdowns as well. One of the biggest threats that, unfortunately, we couldn't really get a chance to see this year just because the team was not good enough, one, and really did not have any intriguing games this year. Hopefully that changes next year. He should be back for his senior season. We'll also go ahead and take a look at the other awards that were won over the course of his season. Brian Brown did end up winning the Maxwell Award as well, in addition to the Heisman Trophy. We did see John Reed, though, finish in second place, and Ikeda Woods finishing in third. As for the Bednarik Award, that goes to sophomore redshirt Daryl Smith, the sophomore linebacker out of Northern Arizona. He ends up with nearly 150 tackles on the year, 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, even forced 4 forced fumbles, and got himself a defensive touchdown as well. Bright spot on that Northern Arizona team that did not see postseason action this year. Following him, we had Ed Deloche, the senior linebacker out of Dartmouth. So Ivy League getting some love here. 105 tackles, 9 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 5 forced fumbles. And then in third place for the Bednarik was Javon Ford, the senior linebacker out of Stephen F. Austin. 112 tackles on the year, 22 TFLs, 6 sacks, an interception, and 7 forced fumbles as well. He was a special player to watch, even though we didn't get a chance to really see him that much this year. As for best quarterback, that went to Kerry Williams, with Ikeda Woods finishing in second place. Kenny Raymer was in third place for the best quarterback on the year. While he wasn't considered a dual threat, he did end up passing for around 3,900 passing yards and 47 touchdowns on the year. That is good for first team honors in the ACC. As for the Walker Award, that is also going to go to Brian Brown, with Jamar Harden finishing in second place. He ends up with around, like, a little bit over 1,500 yards total between receiving as well as his rushing prowess. Did end up with 20 total touchdowns. Willie Ferguson, who played a factor in, his team making it as a number 2 seed, ends up with 1,300 yards rushing, 200 yards receiving, and 17 total touchdowns. He was third place for the Walker Award. Best wide receiver, of course, went to John Reed, who was a finalist for the Heisman, but we do see Eric Vaughn here as well. 1,400 yards receiving and 17 touchdowns. He was a really good receiver and had Eastern Illinois ranked in the top 25 briefly before they fell off in the last couple weeks of the season. Marcus Williams was also a bright spot for Northern Arizona. The senior wideout, standing at only 5'10", ends up with over 100 catches, 1,300 yards receiving, and 17 receiving touchdowns on the year. He was a magnet for that football. At tight end, we saw Kevin Williams take home that stuff right there. Ends up with 44 catches, 730 yards, and 9 touchdowns on the year. So a real receiving threat that Delaware is going to miss this offseason. Brian Reed ends up finishing in second place, though. And then Anthony Newton, the senior tight end out of Brown, the only Ivy League team to go to the FCS playoffs this year. 35 catches, 708 yards, and 8 touchdowns. For the offensive line, that is dominated by North Dakota State guys, as they did have arguably the best offensive line in FCS college football. Did not translate into a national championship, though, as top 3 guys are all Bison. Ben Davis in first, John McCaleb in second, and then Brian Britt in that third place spot. As for the Remington, that goes to another North Dakota State offensive lineman, Tony Paul. The center ends up with 40 pancakes and a couple of sacks. Justin Bernard from New Hampshire, though, finishes in second. He ends up with 25 pancakes and a few sacks allowed. Following him was Justin Oliver, sophomore redshirt, who should be back for his junior year. He ends up with 22 pancakes and a couple sacks allowed, in third place in the Remington. For the Lombardi Trophy, that goes to junior defensive end Craig Seven, who was a menace to society. 12 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. He was a force for that Northwestern State defense. Almost pulled the upset against Georgia Southern in the conference championship game. Jerome Walker did end up following. He, a junior redshirt from Grambling State, also ending up with double-digit sacks on the year, as well as 6 forced fumbles to go with it as well. But a little bit of a guy that flew under the radar was Mark Prince, the junior from Northeastern. 100 tackles on the year, 22 TFLs, 10 sacks, and a couple of forced fumbles as well. Should be back for his senior year and should be very exciting to watch. We do see the best linebacker, of course, which goes to Daryl Smith, followed by Ed Deloche, who was 1-2 for, I believe, was for the Begnerick, if I'm not mistaken. As for third place, that went to Rocky Martinez, the sophomore linebacker out of Furman. He ends up with 122 tackles on the year, 11 TFLs, did a little bit of everything too. Few sacks, few interceptions, a couple of forced fumbles. He was a nice all-around player for the Paladins. As for the Jim Forte Award, that goes to Brian Terrell, who ends up winning the award representing New Hampshire. The junior corner ends up with 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, and 4 touchdowns as well. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw him get some catches as well. He had 9 catches, 148 yards, and 3 touchdowns receiving to go with it. You want to talk about a guy that was a really incredible all-around player. This is it right there. Robert Gray does finish in second, though. The junior from Princeton, and playing that strong safety position, he ends up with 2 sacks, 5 interceptions, and a few forced fumbles. And then Chad Taylor, the senior strong safety, graduating this year, ends up with a few interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and a third place finish. As for the Groza, that goes to the best kicker in college football. Thomas Ball does end up winning it, 16 for 19 on field goals, a long of 48 yards, representing Temple. Cedric Floyd was in second, though. He had I think he should have won it. He had a higher percentage, did end up having a slightly lesser long of 53 yards, but he will be back for his junior year. And then in third was Mike Davis, the senior kicker from William and Mary, 16 for 19, long of 52, and was perfect on his extra points. As for the best punter, that goes to Kevin Tanner, part of the semifinal team for the Montana Grizzlies. The junior did end up with 54 punts total and a 43.2 average. As for second place, that goes to South Dakota punter Alex Phillips. The sophomore ends up with a 44-yard punt average, as well as 23 punts landing inside the 20-yard line. And then in third was Joey McCray, the sophomore from Chattanooga. He ends up with 53 punts on the year, a nearly 46-yard punt average, and 23 punts being downed inside the 20-yard line. As for the best returnman of the year, that goes to sophomore wide receiver Mike Sapp. He ends up with 17 total touchdowns in terms of all-purpose. You know, he was a huge red zone threat, 20 catches and 10 touchdowns, but kick returns, while he did have any kick returns for a touchdown, he did make up for it with 7 punt returns for a touchdown. Has to be an NCAA record for most in a season. Not to be outdone too much, though, Will Patterson did end up finishing in second place. Phenomenal all-around player, ends up with over 1,000 yards receiving on the year. Also contributed with 2 touchdowns in the kick return game, as well as 6 touchdowns in the punt return game. In third place was Maurice Gray, who actually does finish with over 2,000 all-purpose yards and 23 total touchdowns on the year. Guy was a threat whenever he touched the football. Could be back for his senior year, but we'll have to wait and see on that later in the offseason. As for what he did in the return game, he ends up with 3 kick returns for a touchdown. And then as for punt returns, As for punt returns, we do see six touchdowns total. Now, in terms of the coach of the year, it ends up going to the head coach of the Southern Jaguars. Southern making it into the FCS playoffs as the number 22 seed before falling to Georgia Southern. Southeast Louisiana follows suit. They ended up with an 8-3 record, was in play for a conference championship. And then, of course, the Delaware coach ends up finishing third for the coach of the year race. 9-4 on the year. Delaware did win the ACC, but fell in the first round of the FCS playoffs to SMU. Now, before I go ahead and show you guys the players from the FCS Dynasty that did end up making it to the NFL or, another pro football league, let's go ahead and check out some notable transfers or guys that were thinking about going to the professional draft but ended up going back to school due to receiving a undrafted grade in advance to the season 1 NFL draft. So biggest thing here is Eric Hollis, fullback from North Dakota State. He is actually going to transfer to Denver University, so that is a huge loss for the North Dakota State Bison. Also thinking about going to the NFL but decided to go back to school was Ben Davis, who won the Best Offensive Line Award. He should return for his senior year. As for Will Patterson, we'll see if he ends up returning to school, but as of right now, he actually is listed as a undrafted grade receiver. If he does leave school, he would probably be someone that goes either to the Canadian Football League or someone that ends up going to, the XFL or even the USFL. Now, Kenny Raymer is also somebody that is thinking about joining the the pro league ranks. He's kind of sitting in the middle, and James Madison does also have a ton of points that they can go ahead and work off of. Coach Montano, he's gonna put in the full 30 points to talk him into staying, and Kenny Raymer is going to return back to school, thankfully. That was going to be a huge loss for James Madison if Coach Montano did end up losing him to professional football. Jumping down into the 80 overall rankings, we have a couple of guys that might leave for professional sports. Joe Thomas, the wide receiver of Texas State, considering leaving as well. He had a very productive season. And then Darnell Jackson, also thinking of doing the same thing. Nearly 1,000 yards rushing, 14 total touchdowns. He wants to try his hand at professional football. But we do see a few guys from our Dynasty file in the FCS series make their way to the NFL. Let's start with the second round pick for the Arizona Cardinals, Anthony Sanders, representing the University of Massachusetts. The 5'10", 196-pounder. He is going to be their third string free safety to start his rookie campaign, and ends up with a solid overall for someone coming from the FCS level. 66 overall, definitely not bad. He's got some solid speed attributes, and he has really good durability as well. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get hurt very often, and if he does, probably somebody that is going to go ahead and maybe take some minor injuries, but should have a long NFL career if he can work on his craft and adjust to the speed of the NFL. In the 4th round, the Cleveland Browns selected James Muro, the quarterback from Furman. While he did have the most productive senior season in college, he does have the physical attributes in order to be successful. And the Browns took him in light of uncertainty long-term at the quarterback position with what's going on with the Deshaun Watson situation and Baker Mayfield seeking a trade out of Cleveland. So they may be in need of a long-term quarterback. That being said, though, has a solid arm. He has decent accuracy that he'll need to work on. Just needs to work on that awareness. Again, that's really what's holding this guy back at the end of the day. Very good speed, very athletic for sure, but he is someone that will also need to adjust to the speed of the NFL. Now, someone who did have prolific stats at the college level in season number 1 of the FCS series was Josh Hutchinson. We knew this guy, he was putting up stats. His defense kind of let him down. That's why Florida A&M did not reach the playoffs, but he does end up becoming a 7th round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, keeping it in the AFC North. And here's a guy who does have a rocket of an arm that is prevalent right away. The question is, can he work on the speed of the NFL? He comes in with only 53 awareness in terms of NFL comparisons, and can he also work on his accuracy? He did miss some throws in college, does need to work on that a little bit. Does carry some decent speed and, has some good injury and stamina traits to him. Pretty tough guy as well for being down south in Florida. We'll see what happens to him, but he does start his rookie campaign as the 3rd string quarterback for Pittsburgh. Now, taken right out after Josh Hutchinson was Eric Fowler, the quarterback out of South Carolina State. He also is a 7th round pick. Here's a guy, definitely comes in with a strong arm, a little bit of a developmental project behind Daniel Jones, as the Giants organization is trying to figure out what's going on with Daniel Jones. Again, huge arm. That's what NFL scouts deemed him to be, a NFL level quarterback. That's how he got this 7th round opportunity. Comes with an intense personality, has really good leadership traits as well. You love to see that in your quarterback. What's going to really hold him back? Speed of the game. Only 50 awareness for Eric Fowler, but he does get a decent opportunity to start early, actually. Get some early playing time, as Daniel Jones does have an history of getting himself hurt. So we'll see how Eric Fowler does in his rookie year. I'm really intrigued by how he develops in the NFL. Now, one of the best players in season number 1 from an overall standpoint was Lawrence Anderson, 65 overall guy. He ends up getting drafted by the Minnesota Vikings with the 9th pick in the 7th round. And here's a guy that, might end up living past that 7th round expectations. He does have that hidden gem here in Madden 22, but he is going to be buried on the Vikings depth chart early, so hopefully you get plenty of snaps in the preseason. That would be really helpful for him, as well as have the Minnesota Vikings figure out what's going on in terms of, what is his actual ceiling, which I think is relatively high, to be honest with you. But he'll need to go ahead and work on his coverage skills, covering somebody in the NFL and covering somebody not only at the college level, but at the FCS level. That's going to be a little bit of a transition for Anderson, so he's not going to be starting right away, but he is someone that I really like to outlive that 7th round expectation and possibly have a long NFL career to go with it. But now that we've seen some of the premier FCS players get an opportunity at the NFL level, let's go ahead and take a look at the future of FCS college football. First, by taking a look at the best player at each position, and then also take a look at the recruiting rankings as well. Starting with the number 1 player in all of high school football, the athlete Pat Estes from Liberty, Texas, the 6'2", 198-pound guy. He is going to sign with the Southern Jaguars, and it looks like he could very well be somebody that does translate to a dual threat quarterback. Talk about a guy that has a 4.41 40-yard dash, an A+ arm. Does need to work on that pass accuracy a little bit, but somebody that, would be perfect for an option offense. Since he is going to Southern, may have to sit a year. Mike Hill, I believe, is still on the team. We'll see if he starts or not right away, but definitely a very talented football player. As for the quarterback position, we actually have a little bit of a surprise here. James Hamilton, #1 quarterback in high school football, representing Thousand Oaks, California. A little bit of a surprise here. They is going to sign with the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, who did finish under 500 this past season, but they were really on top of his recruitment during the course of the regular season, and not as fast as Pat Estes of 4.6 40 time. Still a exceptional athlete, has better pass accuracy though. C+ guy, has an A+ arm, so he can make any throw on the field. Definitely somebody that can start right away for that Jackrabbits football program. As for the tailback position, the #1 running back in high school football, Patrick Shaw from High Point, Florida. He is going to sign with Florida A&M, the 5'11", 195-pound blue chip. Absolutely insane speed. We're talking about a 4.26 40 time. This man could be a punt returner, kick returner, so he can contribute in special teams right away, but I'm sure he will start right away on that offense. And he's a guy that you can certainly build an offense around, and the Radlers are very lucky to have him on this football team. As for the fullback position, the highest rated fullback to go to an FCS school is Scott Carter. He's the #2 overall fullback, the #1 going to Utah State. But Scott Carter, right out of Covington, Kentucky, is going to stay close to home, and a little bit of a bruiser at 5'11", 226 pounds. Still a pretty exceptional athlete though. Runs about a 4.5 40 dash time. Has very good hands, so he could definitely slide to play that tight end position. He would convert pretty well to the NFL, to be honest, if that is something that he wants to do and that's within him. Also bench presses 400 pounds, so he can also move some people out of the way if need be in the running game. For the wide receiver position, Jonathan Babcock from Dalton, Georgia, was the #1 wide receiver in high school football, and at 6'5", 215 pounds, he is going to sign with James Madison. Now, I mean, you see the size. He is definitely someone that could step in and right away be a great receiver to throw the football to in those one-on-one situations, red zone threat kind of things. But look at this 40 speed. This 40 speed is ridiculous. I don't think I've ever seen a 40 time this fast. Let me know down in the comments, by the way, if you've seen anything faster than this 40. 4.16. That has to be a hand time. Like, there's no way that people are just this fast. That is incredible. He also has a 42-inch vertical to go with it as well. A+ hands. Don't really know what his potential or discipline is. Hopefully, he's someone that can stay on the field, because if he remains healthy, if he works on his craft, he can be, on that fast track to the NFL. As for the tight end position, Brad Peters was the #1 tight end in high school football from Cowletta, Oklahoma. He signs with the North Dakota Fighting Hawks, and dude can play basketball too. We're talking about a 6'8", 248-pound guy. If you wanted to build LeBron James, except make him a football player, this is probably how you would go about it, to be honest. I mean, we're talking 4.58 40-yard time, very good field awareness, B+, has a 36-inch vertical and very soft hands for a tight end as well. Should be a great all-around player. As for the tackle position, Keith Payne from Council Bluffs, Iowa, is the #1 tackle in high school football, and signing to go east to play with the James Madison Dukes at 6'5", 332 pound, provides some absolute beef on the offensive line. Now, he is not that quick, 5'1", A+ field awareness, 29-inch vertical, but does have a 750-pound squat though. He will provide some protection for Kenny Raymer. As for the guards, we have Tim Nobles from Olive Branch, Mississippi, the number 1 guard, signing with the Catamounts of Western Carolina at 6'3", 302 pounds. He also carries some incredible all-around strength as well. This is a guy that has nearly 500 pounds of bench press and also 715 pounds of squat as well. So he can move a lot of weight, and I'm sure he's going to be dishing out a lot of pancakes in his college career. Should be a day 1 starter. Rounding out the number 1 recruits at each position on the offensive side of football, we have the centers. And from Florence, Arizona, we have Michael Alexander, a little bit smaller than the other number 1 guys. Only 280 pounds for an offensive lineman, but carries a lot of fundamental skills and is signing with the University of New Hampshire, and also is pretty quick for an offensive lineman, under 5 for the 40 time. That's a very athletic for an offensive lineman. Also has A+ field awareness as well, so should really help in terms of, making sure that Carlos Montoya remains protected, because if Montoya has time, it's barbecue chicken. So we now move on to the defensive side of football as we check out the number 1 recruits on an individual level, and we'll check in on Phillip Sims from Clifton, Arizona. He actually is going to sign with the Bengals of Idaho State. We saw Idaho State play one time back in week number 1, and they were absolutely obliterated by Temple. They just could not get any pressure. He should really help in that regard though. A+ field awareness, has a 400-pound bench press and a 640 squat to go with it as well. Should be an incredible pass rusher that the Bengals desperately need on that side of football. Speaking of pass rushing, I gotta talk about the number 1 defensive tackle in high school football, Anthony Valentine from Euless, Texas. He is signing with Arkansas Pine Bluff, a huge blue chip guy who also is a pass rusher, and he comes with that 4.86 40 time, so he can definitely not only go after his quarterback, but he can quickly fill up any holes, any gaps in the offensive line, and make sure that these rushing attempts against the Golden Lions are held to a minimum game. Moving on now to the outside linebackers. A little bit of surprise here as Willimantic, Connecticut has a number 1 position player, and his name is Ryan Bush, standing at 6'1", 231 pounds, but he is leaving the Northeast though, and he is going to play at South Carolina State, who was in the running to play in that conference championship. They were eliminated by, I believe, James Madison towards the end of the season. Ryan Bush will definitely help them on the defensive end. This is a huge pickup for the Bulldogs. As for the middle linebacker position, John Hill out of Humboldt, Tennessee, has that number 1 designation in that 6'4", 223-pound linebacker. He is going to remain in the state of Tennessee, as he is going to play his college football with the Tennessee State Tigers. Huge pickup for that program. He's going to be having obviously a fantastic impact and pretty soft hands for a linebacker. That could mean he's going to be in for quite a few interceptions over the course of his career. So the top 3 corners did end up signing at non-FCS schools, but the number 1 corner that actually signed with an FCS school, also going to Florida A&M, Tony Green from the IMG Academy. He's also going to be playing with the Rattlers. Florida A&M, they finished below 500, and this was a defense that was really terrible. Probably a bottom 10, bottom 15 defense last year for the Rattlers. They could put points on the board. That was never an issue. They just couldn't stop a nosebleed. It was as soft as Charmin their defense was, and getting someone like Tony Green is going to really help them out and try to rebuild this defense from the ground up. Up next, we have Dan Thompson, who's the best FCS signing at the free safety position. Hailing from Lakewood, California, he is going to remain out west to play with the Portland State Vikings. Portland State really fortunate to get this signing. 5-star guy, 6'3", 194 pounds, and also going to help build the pipeline for Portland State as well, as getting California as a pipeline state is obviously extremely huge in terms of getting some high quality prospects in future seasons. California, of course, just built different in terms of producing quality collegiate talent. It's up there with Texas and Florida as well. So that takes us to the other safety position in Elliot Caldwell, the Pontiac, Michigan product, who stands at 6'2", 205 pounds. He is going to play for the Delaware State Hornets this fall, as he does sign on the dotted line for them, getting him out of the state of Michigan. Pretty solid safety, 4'3", 40, has a fantastic field awareness and really soft hands as well, and also comes with a 42-inch vertical. So he's someone that, is going to prevent a lot of touchdowns on the back end. He can really prevent some really long plays, those one-on-one situations. So real quick, I did want to touch over the best special teams players that are going to be joining the FCS ranks. Over at kicker, we do also have Randall Smith, who is the highest FCS kicker, the top 3 going to non-FCS schools. From Cerritos, California, he's going to be playing with the Idaho State Bengals. And then for the punter position, we have Kevin Vincent from Fremont, Ohio, also signing with the James Madison, 6'7", 220 pounds. Dude is probably going to be asked to play some basketball too. We'll see how that goes, but very good recruiting class for James Madison. And speaking of James Madison, we'll go ahead and touch on now the top recruiting classes in college football. And did Coach Montana really put an amazing class together? This is a team, and they desperately needed it too. James Madison, they returned just 27 players from last year's squad, so a lot of their talent not on the roster for season number 2, but they are not looking to rebuild. They're looking to reload. 3 of the guys you see on screen, number 1 guys: Jonathan Babcock, number 1 receiver; Kevin Vincent, number 1 punter; Keith Payne, I don't know if he's a number 1 tackle, but he was up there in that conversation. So really great class for James Madison as they look to make another playoff appearance, but also go deeper into the playoffs. They want that national championship. As for Western Carolina, though, gotta give credit to, I believe it's Coach Benfield who coaches the Catamount. It is one of your guys as custom coaches. 3 5-star guys, 12 4-star guys as well, and 7 3-star players. They end up with the number 2 recruiting class in college football. Tim Nobles notably being the number 1 guard. In Western Carolina, they really did a fantastic job of rebuilding that offensive line. 3 5-stars on the offensive line next season. They are going to have, I don't know if it's going to be the best offensive line unit in college football, at least in this dynasty, but it is certainly going to be the most improved. I'm going to expect Brandon McGee, starting quarterback for Western Carolina. He's going to have a big year because of it. As for New Hampshire, they're going to look to rebound off of the disappointment that they experienced in the playoffs. They were bounced in the first round by Tennessee Tech, so a disappointing end to the season for them. They do end up signing the number 3 class though, as they end up with 25 players, so that's really big for them. Because a lot of these like FCS rosters, it is the base rosters, it's not like 2022 rosters or anything like that. Not a lot of players on these FCS teams starting out, so the first recruiting class or 2 is really important, not only from a talent perspective, but just in general building that depth for the future. And getting 25 guys like that, really helpful. They do sign 2 5-stars in Fred Thomas and Michael Alexander. As for North Dakota State, they were also bounced in the first round. They did fall victim to Kent State, although to be fair, Kent State did win the national championship. Still really hurts though. You hate to see it. They put together the best recruiting class that does not feature a 5-star, as they end up signing 12 4-star players as well as 10 3-stars. So a lot of not like high-end talent, but a lot of really quality guys that can step in and start right away, as North Dakota State, they try to build off of what they achieved in terms of year number 1. The only created team that started in that bottom 12 that did make it into the playoffs. Speaking of Tennessee Tech, though, Tennessee Tech is up there. A little bit of a Cinderella. They, found a way to get through that cluster that was in the Big Ten. They got themselves into the playoffs, and they also pulled the upset on New Hampshire as well. And that really, bolstered the prestige of this program. It gets them up to this number 6 spot. While they did not sign any 5-star players, they did end up with 8 4-stars, as well as 9 3-stars to go with it as well. Coming off of a conference championship 2, we'll see if they can make another playoff appearance in year 2. Western Kentucky, another team that's looking to vastly improve, as despite the fact that they finished below 500, they are going to be bringing in a top 10 class. Most notably, they are also bringing in a couple of 5-stars. Mark Motley, the free safety from Molency Park, Illinois, he's a 5-star. And then Orlando Davis, one of the best kickers in high school football, also signing with the Hilltoppers. That will greatly boost their special teams abilities. As for Southern, of course, you guys already know about Pat Estes, which I'm really curious to see what position he translates to. I think he kind of, seamlessly goes to that quarterback position the best. But that is the only 5-star that they got. Still a great class, though. Number 9 class in college football with 5 4-stars and 9 3-stars to go with it as well. They got that championship appearance. They made it to the FCS playoffs. They did make it to the first round, but they were blown off by Georgia Southern. So a little bit of disappointing end, but still a good season for Southern. Texas Southern, though, they were right in the thick of things. For a playoff appearance, they had to beat Georgia Southern. It did not happen, so their season ended on that. But top 10 class to rebound off of it. They got Roderick Murray, who heads it from White Settlement, Texas. And it's a big advantage for Texas Southern, being right in the heart of Texas. A lot of talent in there that should really help them recruit. And I only expect them to get better as the years go on. Sacramento State, though, also putting together a really impressive class. They benefit from being in the state of California. While they only bring in 1 5-star, Donnie Porter from Santa Cruz, California. There's also, they're bringing in some quality guys. Hunter Jones and Anthony Suber as well from California. Number 11 class overall. This is a good look for this program. We're going to get above 500 for the first time in this series. Weber State is also looking to build off of their 6-5 season. They almost pulled the upset on Montana in the regular season. They did almost do that. Defense kind of gave out on them, and they responded by their 3 best signings all being on the defensive side. Dustin Mitchell does head the group. He's the only 5-star in the Weber State recruiting class. But there's also David Parrish and Trevor Miller, a huge safety tandem that is going to really cause some havoc in the Pac-10, I would imagine, for the next 3 to 4 years. Also, building off the success of last year, Arkansas Pine Bluff, they were in the race for that Big 12 North title to go to the conference championship game, but simply was not meant to be. Number 15 class overall should bolster their hopes of not only being above 500 for the first time, but potentially a playoff appearance. Got 3 high-quality players on the defensive side, Anthony Valentin and Carlos Long, who will be huge for their pass rush. And then Anthony Connor from Athens, Texas. We'll see what position he translates to, but he's going to be really good too. Now, another program that kind of has fallen under the cracks, definitely underrated, is Youngstown State. They sneak into the top 25 after all the bowl games finish up. They narrowly miss making the playoffs as an at-large team, and they were also in the race for the conference championship, and they put together a solid class, number 16 in the country. No 5-stars, but you do bring in 5 4-star guys and a few 3-stars as well. Ends up with 19 scholarship players overall. That's going to help provide a foundation for this team. Speaking of foundations, we got to talk about Florida A&M for a second. Patrick Shaw, we know he's the headliner of this class, but also Tony Green on the defensive end and Kevin Muhammad from Glenville Heights, Florida. He's going to really help that defense out too. What was a putrid season on the defensive end. They're not bringing a lot of returning talent back on the defensive end, so they're going to need all the help that they can get. We'll see who ends up starting at quarterback now that Josh Hutchinson has gone off to the NFL, but I really like what Florida A&M has done with this class. As for Northern Arizona, they also put together a strong class, number 19 in college football, despite not having a single 5-star to their name. 5 4-stars, though, making up the group, as 2 of their top 3 signings from the state of Arizona, so doing a very good job locking up their home state there. John Williams, Zach Moses heading the defensive side of the ball, and then Quinn Rosario is their best offensive signing. The Goodyear, Arizona product is going to provide some nice blindside protection for whoever starts for the Lumberjacks next season. As for Georgia Southern, it looks like Ikeda Woods is going to get a nice heap of help there. As Georgia Southern, they signed 4 4-star guys, 2 of which on the offensive side of the ball. Cedric Hart is going to help provide some additional protection for Ikeda Woods as he progresses into his sophomore year. And then Blake Williams as well from West End Cobb, Alabama. He's going to have another weapon to work with out of the backfield, another weapon that can be utilized for that option attack as they look to get past the second round here in season number 2. At number 23, we have one of the custom coaches, Coach Tyber Guillen, who puts together a pretty solid class. Number 23 in the country. Mario Gray headlines the group from St. Anne, Missouri. He is the lone 5-star for the Redhawks, but also some solid 4 and 3-star talent as well. Larry Scott and Scott Cunningham, notably for this group, should be Larry Scott and Cunningham should have some fun battles in practice. I'm sure Coach Tyber Guillen, one of the custom coaches actually, really excited about that. They were briefly ranked at the top 25, and then they fell off towards the second half of the season, but hopefully they can have a more consistent play throughout the year, and maybe this recruiting class will help. Rounding out the top 25, though, we got the Bearcats of Sam Houston State, also benefiting from being in the state of Texas. 5 4-star guys, notably led by Matt Munitsky, Dave King at middle linebacker, and Josh Johnson at corner. And then at number 25, the last top 25 spot, we got the Bulldogs of South Carolina State. Ryan Bush, the outside linebacker, best outside linebacker in college football, by the way, signs with the Bulldogs. That's a huge pickup for that defense. He's going to be paired with Reggie Hill, the middle linebacker from Carmel, Indiana. So that's 2 new starters in that linebacking core right away. That's dangerous. And then Jason Shaw out of the backfield from Lake Madeline, Florida. He's also a pretty good 4-star guy as well. So I'm not going to talk about every single class in this dynasty because that'll just make the video too terribly long. But I do want to highlight a few more teams outside of the top 25 that did make it to the FCS playoffs last year. We do have Delaware, for example, ACC conference champions. They did beat James Madison to get a first round home game. Now, they did lose to SMU and they lost pretty convincingly, which is a tough thing to see. And despite all of that, only number 37. Now, it is a little bit more difficult to recruit in Delaware. Delaware not exactly known for football talent. They're going to have to rely on neighboring states, but they do sign a couple of 2-stars though. Elliot Hester, he plays free safety, hailing from Kingston, New York. He's going to build a nice tandem with Anthony Wilkinson as well. He plays that corner, and one of the best players from the state of Delaware. He also ends up with that 4-star designation. Also kind of being underwhelming is Montana, who made it to the semifinal of the playoffs this year for season number 1. Travis Slaughter and Braylon Hurst do highlight this group that finishes 41st in the recruiting rankings this season. And Travis Slaughter is a big signing because Derek Keefe, don't get me wrong, very talented quarterback. I believe he's coming back. I think he's starting season number 2. But one thing that really hurt them was their backup quarterback, Eddie Jones. When he came into the game against Kent State, that's when the golden flashes really pulled away. And as much as I love Eddie Jones and how he handled business in the regular season, having Travis Slaughter is simply going to be better for this program. And even if he doesn't start right away, he will be a backup that will probably see some playing time sparingly in his true freshman season. And I think he's going to be more talented than Eddie Jones, and that's going to help the Montana Grizzlies maybe take that next step, possibly getting to a national championship. But not a lot of huge notable talent for Montana, so they might have to worry about some teams catching up from behind, particularly within their own conference. Another team that I wanted to highlight is Morgan State, who is led by Coach Dion Kirby. Just real quick, they ended up with the 54th ranked recruiting class. Pretty solid for an independent school, as they are sadly remaining as a 1-star. Did sign 3 4-star guys though. Jason Silva, Desmond Morris, and Kevin Bernard is going to head this group as they continue to improve moving into the future of this series. As for McNeese State, they did make it into the playoffs as an at-large team. They did end up getting blown out by James Madison though in that first round, and they finished middle of the road in terms of recruiting. A little bit disappointed with how they handled recruiting this year. They did sign 1 4-star guy though, Seth Smith. He's probably going to be one of the best players on the team moving forward. Hailing from Lone Grove, Oklahoma, does provide, I believe Stacy Respis is still starting for the Cowboys. We'll see if that is still the case or not. No, actually Respis graduated, so it's going to be Sadoway who is going to be starting at quarterback next season for them, and that should be really interesting to see how that turns out. Given whenever we saw the Cowboys in gameplay, they were a little bit disappointing. Now, real quick, in case you guys are wondering how Kent State did in recruiting, that national championship, not really that impressive to the recruits. Despite winning it all here in season number 1, they actually only finish with the 74th ranked recruiting class, and they also only get 3 3-star guys. So I'm a little bit surprised with how poorly they did in recruiting. So maybe this is a team that does take a step back next season. As for the Brown Bears, they actually finish with the worst recruiting class among teams that do make it to the FCS playoffs. Now, the Ivy League does have more unique challenges because they have those rigorous academic requirements, and academics take priority over the athletics at these Ivy League schools. So it's a unique challenge, and it does provide Brown with one of the best academic prestiges in this dynasty, but it's not helping them in recruiting. Actually, it hinders them at times, but despite that, they still managed to find 2 4-stars that are able to get accepted into Brown University. So congratulations to Nick Walker and Dan Harris. Going to be an interesting challenge to see how the Ivy League fares out, because this is those academic requirements might stop these Ivy League teams from becoming powerhouses, unless there's a really good coach, of course. As for South Dakota State, led by head coach Justin Faith, he ends up with a 96th ranked recruiting class, but they do end up signing the best quarterback, James Hamilton, Thousand Oaks, California, 5-star guy, best quarterback. He's also going to end up starting day 1 for them, so they should improve from their 4-7 record that they ended up here in season number 1. But not really much else for this class to go off of. Outside of the quarterback position, a bunch of 2-stars and 1-stars. And in case you guys were wondering who had the very worst recruiting class in this season number 1, it ends up going to the University of Missouri in Kansas City. They are still starting their football program out, and I guess the prospects of getting playing time, not really that attractive getting the Kangaroos, because they only end up with 12 signings total. Only one of them ends up being a 3-star, Tom May, and they will finish with the worst class. And that's not helpful considering they're one of the worst teams in college football this past season. So guys, if you want to see the full recruiting rankings, I will have a Google Sheets laid down in the pinned comments section. And also, this is the time that I wanted to talk to you guys about how you guys can get a little bit more personally involved in this series. I am not taking any new custom coaches because I got a bunch of new submissions when this series was first taking off. So I want to make sure that these custom coaches, I get them in first before I worry about any potentially new submissions. But I am going to take some custom players though. And how I have it set up, how's it going to work is I'm going, in the interest of getting as many of you guys in as possible, what I am going to do, all you need to do, follow the template down in that pinned comment section. Just leave your name, what position that you want to play, and also like your top 3 choices, what FCS school you want to go to. I will also have a full list of the FCS schools that you can choose from in that pinned comment as well. It will all be there. I do have it set up also by overall ranges. So for example, if you're a guy in my Discord that, and you submit a player through there, your guy is going to be somewhere between a 70 and 75 overall. And if you submit through YouTube, your guy is going to be a 60 to 69 overall, which, we're still talking about a guy that is either going to be a low end starter or someone that's at least going to contribute early right away, especially in the early parts of this series, because a lot of these FCS teams are still trying to build their rosters from the ground up. So if you guys are interested in a custom player, I will have that link down in the pinned comment section. If I have a heart by your custom player, that means I did have them marked down and I have them in the series. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. And next episode, I don't know if I'll have like a live stream, like to show all the custom players, or I'll have like a standalone episode for that before we get into gameplay in year 2. That's still to be determined, but hopefully I can see some of your submissions in the comment section. But guys, that is going to go ahead and wrap things up here for the Season 1 off-season recap. Hope you guys are excited for it. As next episode, what I will plan to do, whether it's a live stream or otherwise, I will do a preview for this upcoming season. We'll take a look at the top 25 rankings, see who the preseason All-Americans is as well. And not to mention, we're going to show and reveal the custom prospects that are going to be included in this series. So guys, you're not going to want to miss that. And I hope you guys are excited for it. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed today's episode, man, I need you guys to go ahead and do me a favor. Smack that like button for me, and then also hit that subscribe button for me as well if you do happen to be brand new. This is John Shit Gaming on the mic signing off. I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.